Sometime around the beginning of 2018, my family and I decided that we were going to be moving to Longview, Texas. At the time, I was actually pretty excited to get a fresh start. I had a lot of friends in Midland, but at the same time, I was excited to have a little bit of a change. I've never been a huge fan of Midland. When I moved to Longview, I had a lot of trouble making new friends, and I was okay with that because I had already planned out exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to get the Jeep ready for the road trip and leave as soon as I turned 18, maybe even the week I turned 18. I was very adamant about this, and I had no intentions of having anything get in my way. Soon after moving to Longview, I needed to get a job, and since I was going to be turning 18 that year, I figured I might as well just get something quick and temporary. So I applied for a job that I knew I could get and started working at Chick-fil-A. About 3 months into working at that Chick-fil-A, they hired a new girl there, and her and I started to get along pretty well at work. We eventually found out that we actually had a lot in common and started running into each other in public. There was many times that I would be leaving the Silver Grizzly and catch her on the way out. So naturally, we became friends. Later we found out that we had even more in common than we thought, and we became best friends. We started texting regularly and got to know each other pretty well. Since we worked together almost every day and had similar shifts, we would typically tend to go on breaks together, and this gave us a lot of time to really just get to know each other. Eventually, we started hanging out, and naturally, since we both had so much in common, eventually we found out that we had feelings for each other, and due to personal reasons, I told her that I did not think that it was going to be possible to be in a relationship. And she wanted to try anyway, so we did. Fast forward a few months and things really weren't working out. However, we still were extremely close and still talked almost every day. I soon learned that she had a lot of problems in her personal family life. And around the time of Christmas, there was an incident where she told me that she had been giving her brother a ride, and he had gotten extremely frustrated with her and just started screaming and cussing at her, grabbing the steering wheel and trying to steer her off the road. And it scared her to the point that she just pulled over, continued to let him yell at her before getting out of the car and walking away. She told me that she sat there, cried for a while before just driving home, and upon returning home, was immediately yelled at by her mother after her brother had called her, complaining and telling her that he didn't want to spend Christmas with them because her sister was being such a jerk. A little bit of context as to what was going on. His sister was around my age, and he's almost in his 30s. He has 3 kids that he typically would just drop off at my friend's house and disappear to do drugs and other things. We didn't find this out until recently, and I am one of the few people who knows this, but we'll get to that later. Because of this, my friend was very attached to her nieces and nephew, because she would babysit them almost every day, if not every other day. Her mom blamed her for her brother not wanting to spend Christmas with them, and she even blamed herself. And that did not go by me very well. I remember spending hours and maybe even days trying to convince her that none of this was her fault, and she just couldn't convince herself she felt extremely guilty about not getting to spend Christmas with her family. Christmas for me personally would have been fine, except she was sick that day and I just couldn't enjoy myself. I was able to fake it for my family, but I spent most of the day feeling awful and trying to just let her know that I was there if she needed me, even though that I knew that there wasn't really anything I could do. I felt awful that week. My memory becomes a little foggy around this time, but I remember that a few months went by and our relationship as well as our friendship was pretty much falling apart. One day she just basically texted me and said that she didn't want to talk anymore, and that was basically what she left it at. I was very unhappy to receive that text, especially since she didn't even seem to have the decency to want to call me or try to talk to me later, and that infuriated me. I basically told her to never talk to me again and kind of threw a fit, since she had already been asking for distance and I was not in a good position. However, this day was the reason that I don't plan on ever going back to Longview. That night, she asked if we could talk, and I didn't want to hear it. I told her that she had already made her decision, she clearly didn't have any intentions in talking about it, and I just didn't want to hear it. She seemed really upset, even though it was her idea in the first place to just not want to talk. And I was a little confused. The whole week she had been acting really strange, and I had been really insistent on asking her what was going on, and she just refused to tell me. It really frustrated me not knowing what was going on this whole time. I knew she had been acting strange, but she continued to only tell me that it had nothing to do with me and that she just needed space. I decided to call her on the phone and was surprised to hear her crying hysterically. This was really confusing for me, and I decided to calm down and ask her what was wrong. It was at this moment that she proceeded to tell me that it's not okay to be angry with the people you love. She said that being angry with the people you love is wrong, and that it's not okay. She continued to mumble things after this, and I was completely confused as to what she was talking about, since, as far as I was concerned, I had every right to be upset. And I didn't understand how she could even expect me not to be upset after what had just happened. It wasn't long after this that she told me that it's not okay, that her brother's thrown her on the ground and beaten her, and it's not okay to do that. I felt a surge of electricity go to my heart immediately after hearing that, and she hung up. I tried to call her back multiple times before she finally picked up the phone and didn't say anything. I sat on the phone with her and just listened to her cry herself to sleep after that. The weeks after that are extremely foggy to me, but she refused to tell me anything after that about what was going on. She insisted that she was fine, that it wasn't a big deal, and that she just can't tell me anything else. I used the rest of these last couple of weeks to try to do whatever I could to help, and Since I didn't have anything to go off of, I just tried to give her gifts, bringing her coffee almost every day and just doing whatever else I could do to try to help, even though she still insisted on not talking. About a month after this, she told me once again that she's cutting it off and she's not going to talk to me anymore. I assumed that eventually she would come around, but that was the last time we talked. I would go into work almost every day, and with the knowledge I had and all of the time we had spent together, I would have to walk in and see that person and feel like a total stranger. She completely ignored me, and I couldn't handle walking in not knowing what was going on at the same time. I wasn't able to ask if she was okay. I wasn't even able to say good morning. She just completely ignored me. Around this time, the amount of anxiety I was feeling just from being at work was to the point I was taking almost 7 ibuprofen a day. And at the end of every week, I would get sick. I would get fevers, migraines, and just overall nausea. It was completely killing me physically to stay at that job, so I had to quit. Around this time, I bought a Miata, and although it was seen as a terrible financial decision, it really helped me to have something else to focus on around that time and just, put all my energy into trying to fix a problem I actually could fix. I sold it later, but that's not the point of the story. I don't remember the rest of that year at all. It's like my memory completely forgot that it ever existed. But I know in that time, I spent over a year trying to study psychology, mental health, and anything else I could about abuse, and just how to handle it. I did everything in my power to try to understand her, what she was going through, and what I could possibly do to help. Eventually, I gave up on trying to help her and tried to focus more on me, because at this point, it was killing me with this knowledge. Not having answers to the questions about her abuse and what was going on was tearing me apart. I typically am a very calm person, or as my brother has put it before, Trevor doesn't get mad. He can get really stressed out, but he doesn't ever get mad. This is the first time in my life I can say that I've ever been angry. And not just angry to the point that I need to cool off. Angry to the point that I've punched brick walls. Angry to the point that I probably could have knocked a 100-pound punching bag to the ground by beating it to death. I would go outside just to relieve stress in the middle of the night and pound on my punching bag to the point my knuckles would bleed. And it actually made me feel better. Every single day, I couldn't get the thought out of my mind, and I continue to have nightmares about what may have been going on that I couldn't possibly imagine. Not having answers to those questions only allowed my imagination to wander. And the thought of somebody hurting the person I loved infuriated me. I proceeded to try to get in contact with her, constantly doing whatever I needed to try to just know what was going on, and she continued to refuse to give me any information at all. Eventually, I came to the realization that there was nothing I could do. And I decided that the only thing left for me to do was to get out as soon as possible. Around this time, my grandma was planning on moving to Albuquerque, and I was honestly trying to move with her just to get away. It didn't work out, and I eventually had to get another job, and I decided that I was going to focus all my time and energy on just trying to get on the road so I could start the road trip and finally live my dream. Not long after getting this new job, the Jeep's transmission broke down. and it was going to take me a while to finally get that back on the road. Fast forward a few months, and I finally was able to get the AX15 swapped in. After this, I was finally ready to get on the road. After getting everything bolted on, I left for Colorado. I remember the amount of relief I felt finally leaving Longview. It was like I was unstoppable. Any problem I could have run into was nothing compared to what I had just dealt with. For the last couple of years, I felt an unbelievable amount of stress and anxiety, and I was finally free from all of it. As soon as I made it to Colorado, I felt like myself for the first time in what felt like forever. I was finally happy, and I got a little too comfortable. Around this time, my parents wanted me to go on vacation with them, and I was convinced I'd be able to do it. But as soon as I went on the vacation with them, it was awful. All my anxiety came back, all the thoughts I had been having, and all my demons had returned with it. I eventually got stuck back in Longview, and it completely drained me. Although I tried to make it look like I spent the whole time working on the Jeep while I was there, I spent probably 90% of my time laying in a bed, feeling awful, and I hated it. I told myself that as soon as I was able to get out, I was never going to return. And that catches us up to where we are now. Recently, I finally got to start the road trip, and I never plan on going back. I never wanted to go back, and I still don't want to today. I still, to this day, don't know anything about that situation. What I've told you guys is literally all I know. And although there is so much more to the story, the reason I can never go back to Longview is because anything that reminds me of her reminds me of that night. And all I can think about is listening to her cry herself to sleep. And when that happens, it sends me to a place where all I want to do is find the people who have hurt her. I know that some people might think that violence is never the answer, and quite frankly, I don't care. If I was ever given the opportunity, I feel like I would not be able to stop myself from putting that guy down. And people who know me personally know that I don't just talk. Whether this is seen as a threat is really up to the listener to decide, but I feel like it's the most merciful thing I could do with what I know. I've tried to see if there's anything I can do as far as contacting any authorities, and it really seems like everything is out of my hands. All I really know is that this road trip is no longer just a dream to me. It's all I have left. The only way for me to escape from all of my past problems and to not have to think about all the things I can't change and what may or may not be happening. I've been told before that I can't run away from my problems. The fact of the matter this time is there's nothing else I can do. Aside from doing something that might be irrational, I have exhausted every option I have. I know not everybody's going to understand this video, and maybe some people will think that I'm over-exaggerating, or that I need to get over it, or that this really isn't a big deal. Asking me to forget about this just sounds insane to me. Or telling me that eventually one day I will wake up and no longer care if the person I once loved is possibly being abused is insane to me. And the best thing I can do is try not to think about it too much. Truthfully, I have no idea if this is still going on, if it was something from the past, and since I have tried to get answers to these questions that I have yet to receive, which means even if she's okay, and even if this isn't going on still, it's still very real to me. I think that it was completely irresponsible of her to tell me this and to never give me any closures, not only to this information, but to ending our entire relationship in general. I think it was cruel and not okay for her to do something like that. Because of this, I do not know if we could ever talk again or reconnect. But that does not mean that I do not still love her. And I'm not sure that there will ever be a time that I do not love her. These situations have completely changed how I see the world and how I think of things. And despite all the pain it's caused me, I am also thankful for all it's taught me. It has really helped me to appreciate more things in life and to be more aware of my surroundings. Although it has also taught me not to trust many people, and has also sometimes made me become a little bit defensive at times. I can only hope that I will be able to continue this road trip and that hopefully start a better life for myself in the future. Even though I have not said anything about this for the last 2 years and have tried to seem like my most optimistic self, this is something that I still struggle with on an almost daily basis. There has been many days I have woken up from nightmares, had trouble sleeping, or sometimes just driving down the road just think about this, and I don't know how much longer I would have been able to keep going on without making this public. Because the fact of the matter is, this is the reality of my life, and this is the story of my life.